In 2024, more than 3 million American homes installed solar photovoltaic panels. Average installation cost, $22,000. Electricity savings, 50 to 70%. 3 miles away, another family spent $800 and solved 90% of their hot water bill with a technology that is 60 years older, 3 times more efficient, and completely ignored by the modern solar industry. It's called solar thermal. And in 1891, 133 years ago, it was already a successful commercial product in the United States. Today we're going to tell you the story of how a perfectly functional technology, one that's more efficient than solar panels, was effectively erased from the American market, why the modern solar movement prefers you not mention it, and how you can install a complete solar hot water system for less than the cost of a flight to Las Vegas. 2 completely different technologies. To understand why this matters, you need to understand the difference between the 2 types of solar energy. Solar photovoltaic panels, the ones you see on rooftops today, convert sunlight into electricity. They're semiconductors. Light strikes silicon, releases electrons, and that generates electric current. The conversion efficiency of the best panels on the market in 2024 is between 20 and 23%, meaning for every 100 watts of sunlight hitting the panel, 20 or 23 become electricity. The rest becomes heat that dissipates into the environment. Solar thermal does the opposite. Instead of converting light into electricity, it converts it directly into heat. And because heat is physically easier to capture than electricity, solar thermal collectors have conversion efficiencies of between 65 and 80%, 3 to 4 times more efficient than photovoltaic, watt for watt of collector area. The catch is that heat only works for things that need heat. And the most obvious, most direct, most efficient use of solar heat is heating water. In the average American home, water heating represents 14 to 18% of the energy bill. In large families, more than 20%. It's the second largest household energy expense after space heating and cooling. A properly installed solar thermal system can cover 60 to 90% of that demand, depending on climate and system size. 1891-1950. The erased history. In 1891, Clarence Kemp, a Baltimore businessman, patented the first commercial solar water heater, the Climax solar water heater. It was simple, a black painted water tank exposed to the sun, but it worked. Thousands of units were sold. By the 1920s, Florida had a thriving solar water heater industry. In Miami, more than 60% of homes had solar water heaters installed on the roof. It was the standard technology. In California, solar heaters were equally common. In Los Angeles, companies like the Southern California Solar Heater Company had product catalogs, dealer networks, and testimonials from satisfied customers. And then, in the 1940s and 1950s, 2 things happened. First, the massive build-out of natural gas infrastructure. The New Deal and the post-war period saw an enormous expansion of gas networks. The federal government subsidized pipeline construction. Natural gas in homes went from a luxury of the wealthy to standard in a matter of decades. Second, gas and electric companies began offering gas and electric water heaters at subsidized prices, sometimes free, to homeowners who connected to the grid. If the gas heater is free and gas is cheap, why would you spend money on a solar heater? By 1960, the residential solar thermal industry in the US had practically disappeared. The knowledge, the manufacturers, the installers, all of it had evaporated. Why solar thermal is so much more efficient? The reason solar thermal outperforms photovoltaic for heating applications comes down to one very simple fact. Photovoltaic panels are doing something much harder. Turning sunlight into electricity requires semiconductor physics, electron movement, voltage regulation, inverters, and conversion losses at every stage. Solar thermal skips all of that. It simply captures heat directly. And heat is what sunlight naturally becomes anyway. That's why photovoltaic panels actually get less efficient as they become hotter. Excess heat is essentially wasted energy in a PV system. But in solar thermal, heat is the product. A black thermal absorber sitting under glass in direct sunlight can reach temperatures above 180 degrees Fahrenheit with no electronics whatsoever. No inverter, no lithium battery, no microchips, just sunlight becoming heat. This is also why solar thermal systems can continue operating for decades with minimal degradation. Photovoltaic panels slowly lose efficiency over time, typically around 0.5% per year. Inverters often require replacement after 10 to 15 years. A solar thermal collector is fundamentally simpler. Glass, copper tubing, insulation, pump. That simplicity is one reason some systems installed in the 1970s are still operational today. The country that made it mandatory 44 years ago. In 1980, the Israeli government passed a law making solar water heating systems mandatory in all new residential buildings. Today, more than 90% of Israeli households have solar water heaters. Israel has more solar collectors per capita than any other country in the world. And 4% of the country's total electricity demand has been eliminated just by this policy. China has installed over 400 million square meters of solar thermal collectors. To put that in perspective, if you laid all those collectors side by side, they'd cover an area larger than the state of California, Germany, Austria, Denmark, Greece. Across southern and central Europe, solar water heaters are standard in new residential construction. In the US, approximately 1.5 million homes have some type of solar thermal system. In a country of 140 million housing units, 1%. The cheap energy era changed everything. To understand why solar thermal disappeared from American neighborhoods, you have to understand post-war America. For most of the 20th century, the United States had some of the cheapest energy on Earth. Cheap natural gas, cheap electricity, cheap oil. And when energy is cheap, efficiency stops mattering. A homeowner in 1955 didn't care whether a water heater was highly efficient if natural gas cost almost nothing and utility bills were a tiny percentage of household income. At the same time, suburban development exploded. Mass-produced homes prioritized standardization and low upfront cost. Gas water heaters became default appliances included in new construction. The energy industry reinforced that model aggressively. Utilities wanted households fully dependent on grid energy because every appliance connected to the system increased long-term consumption. And unlike solar thermal, gas and electric water heaters guaranteed continuous monthly revenue. The result was that solar thermal slowly became associated with fringe experimentation rather than mainstream infrastructure. By the 1980s, most Americans had never even seen a solar water heater despite the technology once being common across entire cities. Ironically, the exact opposite happened in countries where energy remained expensive. Israel lacked domestic fossil fuel resources. Southern Europe faced high electricity costs. China needed alternatives to reduce grid strain. So those countries invested in thermal efficiency while the US doubled down on cheap centralized energy. Why the solar PV industry prefers you don't know about the modern solar movement in the US is built around photovoltaic. And there are very clear economic reasons for that. A residential solar PV system costs $15,000 to $25,000. It generates significant margins for manufacturers, distributors, and installers. There are federal tax credits, state incentives, and a market for leasing contracts and PPAs that has generated billions for companies like SunPower, Sunrun, and Tesla Solar. A solar thermal system costs $800 to $3,500 installed. Margins are smaller. The system is simpler, fewer components, less technology, fewer reasons to charge more, and it doesn't generate electricity that you can sell back to the grid. For solar photovoltaic companies, solar thermal is competition. A homeowner who installs solar thermal for hot water reduces their electricity demand without needing their panels. Add to that the fact that solar thermal doesn't have the visual wow factor of a roof full of shiny panels. There's no app to monitor, no real-time data. It lacks the tech appeal that makes solar panels easy to sell. The result is that most Americans who are thinking about going solar never receive a proposal for solar thermal. Installers don't offer it, marketing companies don't advertise it, and most consumers never know it exists, how it works, and what installation costs. There are two main types of solar thermal collectors. The flat plate collector is the simplest and cheapest. It's essentially a metal box with a glass cover, inside which copper tubes painted black carry water or fluid. The sun heats the tubes, water or fluid circulates through them, and that heat transfers to your home's hot water tank. Efficiency, 60 to 70%. Cost, $14 to $37 per square foot. The evacuated tube collector is more sophisticated. These are concentric glass tubes with vacuum between the layers, like a giant thermos, surrounding an inner absorber tube. The vacuum eliminates convective heat losses. Efficiency, 70 to 80%, and they outperform flat plate collectors in cold climates and low radiation conditions. Cost, $23 to $56 per square foot. For a family of 4 in a moderate climate, you need between 32 and 54 square feet of collector. The complete system, collectors, storage tank, circulation pump, controls, costs between $1,500 and $4,000 professionally installed, or $600 to $1,500 as a DIY kit. Annual savings, between $300 and $600 per year in gas or electricity for water heating, depending on local rates and climate. Payback period, 3 to 8 years. After payback, the system produces hot water essentially for free for 20 to 30 years. Well-maintained collectors have that lifespan without significant replacement parts. How to install one yourself. Solar thermal is one of the most DIY accessible renewable technologies. It doesn't handle dangerous voltages. It doesn't require an electrician. In most states, it doesn't require a permit for installations below a certain capacity. The simplest system is thermosiphon. Collectors are mounted on the roof below the storage tank. Hot water, being lighter, rises naturally into the tank. No pump. No controls. No moving parts. Just physics. For climates where temperatures drop below freezing in winter, you need a closed-loop system with antifreeze. The primary circuit fluid, which circulates through the collectors, is antifreeze. The technology the solar movement forgot. There's a deep irony in all of this. The solar energy movement in the US, which presents itself as alternative, as disruptive, as the alternative to the energy establishment, has systematically ignored the most efficient, cheapest, and most mature solar technology available. Solar thermal has no app, no Silicon Valley marketing, no Elon Musk promoting it. But it has 133 years of proven history. It has 90% household penetration in Israel. It has 400 million square meters installed in China. And it has conversion efficiencies that the best photovoltaic panels cannot match for heat applications. If you're considering solar energy for your home and nobody has mentioned solar thermal to you, now you know why. And now you know what questions to ask. The forgotten solar technology. Solar thermal occupies a strange place in energy history. It's older than modern solar panels, more efficient for heating applications, cheaper to install, simpler to understand. And yet most Americans have never heard of it. Not because it failed, but because energy markets evolved around technologies that generated larger industries, larger financing systems, and larger profits. Solar thermal doesn't need complicated software. It doesn't require billion-dollar battery factories. And it doesn't create recurring utility relationships. It just quietly turns sunlight into hot water extremely efficiently. For over a century, it has worked almost exactly as advertised. The next video in this series covers the passive cooling system that has existed for millennia and that 90% of Americans have never considered as an alternative to air conditioning. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Leave a comment. Did you already know the difference between solar thermal and solar photovoltaic?